Hi, welcome back to our podcast.
Today we're talking with Wallace Riden. We talked with his wife, Jessica, last time. And so we're going to meet Wallace. We've also known him about 22 years. And the way he and Antonio met is quite an interesting story. Yeah. So hopefully we'll get to that at some point. Wallace has inspired us for, ever since we first knew him 22 years ago. Mm-hmm. Like I said last time about Jessica, he has a similar story in that he's a walking miracle. God has transformed his life, and he's now a great husband, father. He's a pastor now. And that's the other thing I really admire about him is his love for people. He has a heart for people, heart for hurting people. And it comes out in his preaching. And I even asked him one time, do you like preaching? He said, yeah. And I said, yeah, because you can really tell it comes out. He has a joy and a love and while he's doing it. So you can really see his passion for preaching. And so what do you admire about him?
Well, I really admire just the fact that you've overcome the odds, of all the things that you've gone through and where you started and where you are now. That it's amazing, and I won't go into detail of this and that or all the different odds, but it's really inspiring because you've taken what you've learned and now you're going out and helping other people, through coaching basketball and different things like that. And it's just amazing to see because, at one time you were following your family. Now your family is coming to you for an advice, and now they're getting guidance from you. So it's just really amazing how you're taking that and now you're leading and guiding other people.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this since we originally spoke 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And we were planning on doing it. So we've been looking forward to it, and I'm happy to be here.
Yes.
And one of the reasons we're dressed up differently today is Antonio just preached for Wallace at his church.
He did a great job, by the way.
So we've been together all day, had lunch together. So,
yeah.
So Wallace, just thank you again for coming, taking the time to do this. Mm-hmm. And Antonio and I have heard some about your background. We know your family some, and we've heard some of the stories, and through your preaching sometimes, or just your testimony. Mm-hmm. So kind of take us back to, your childhood. Where are you from? Who did you grow up with?
Yeah. So, first of all, everything that I am today, I am because of Jesus Christ and what he was able to do in my life. So I would just like to say that, first of all, that any success I have is because of him. Well, I grew up in not too far from here. It's about 20 minutes in a little small town called Hull, Georgia. That's Hull. And so
it's the Well City.
Yeah, the Well City. Yeah, it actually is. Yeah, it's the Well City. But I was born in Athens, but raised in that little small town there by my grandmother and my grandfather. And so my mother was unable to take care of me, and my dad was unable to take care of me as well. And so I ended up in the foster system. I was in 6 different foster homes by the time I was 18 months. And so my grandmother, her kids were older, they were adults. And so she had a lot of family members begging her to adopt me, to take me in. But she was like, no, my kids are older. I'm not doing that. I've already raised my children, but she decided to do it. And so she was working 2 jobs at the time. So she quit her second job, which was a evening job, in order to take me in. And so she did. She adopted me and she raised me from a little boy, 18 months. And so, I consider her, my mother. So I was raised by her and my grandfather. And my dad was around,
So these are your dad's parents?
Yes. So these are my dad's parents. Didn't know my mother's family, and didn't know a whole lot about them. Growing up, I can say that she probably only came around maybe once or twice. And I remember she would make a lot of promises. I'm going to come see you, and I would be looking for her, and she never would show up. So my grandmother took me in, raised me, and she did a good job. She was older, but she kept up with me, taking me to basketball practice and and baseball practice and all of those sorts of things. And so she was my mother.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Did you have other family? I remember kind of when we used to come pick you up for church.
Yeah.
You seem to live like in a community of a lot of relatives.
Yeah.
You got a lot of family around.
Yes. So I was in our house. My grandmother has such a big heart. She would take anybody in. So there was always someone living with us, like, someone who got kicked out of their house, they could come live with us. Or someone who was on the street, they can come live with us. So that's we always had just, people living with us at times. But my aunt lived behind us in a trailer. She lived directly behind us. And she moved out. My uncle moved behind us. Okay. And so at one point I had an uncle behind me and then an auntie 2 houses down from me. Okay. And that was a little bit of a community there, I guess you could say.
We can't forget about Tony.
Yeah, so my uncle Tony he's my uncle. He never moved out. I think he finally left when they lost the house. That's too long of a story to go into. But my uncle Tony was there the whole time, and he was battling. He had some very severe mental issues, and so he would be one way 1 minute and then the other way the next minute. Like literally, you could see him in the morning and he would be one person, and then you come back that evening, he completely flipped the script and be a completely different person. And so
looking back, were those pretty good years? You have pretty fond memories of childhood?
I do. I do. When I was growing up, I didn't at the time, but the older I've gotten, my perspective of it all has changed. And when I look back, I can say my grandmother did a really, really good job. Okay. And, my love for church really started with her, because even though they wouldn't really that good of a Christian example at times, we still went to church, and so I remember singing in the choir as a little boy and gospel music. All that come from her.
So now, was that the church right up the street from your house, or?
Yeah, it was walking distance.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And so it was Mount Zion Baptist Church. Shout out to Mount Zion Baptist Church. But that's the church that I grew up in. We would go when we were little children. I remember hating to go, and now I love going to church. But I remember as a little boy, we hated to go, but they would drag us to church, and then eventually we got in the choir. Okay. And I remember, being in the choir as a little boy. And so my love for church started with her, just the reverence and respect that she had for the church. And that trickled over into who I am today, I believe. Even before I got saved, I always had respect and, for the church.
So that was kind of childhood, getting into your teenage years. Did anything change, or those years go pretty good too?
So my childhood years were great. I stayed out of trouble for the most part. My grandmother, her and I were really close. My grandfather, we were really close. He was like my dad. Like, we did everything together. We went fishing together. He did anything for me. That was kind of the relationship we had. He just, I was his grandson. It's like I was the son that he never had, because he didn't have a good relationship with his children. They didn't even call him dad. They all called him by first name, Clifford. I used to wonder, that was kind of weird growing up, like, why are you, that's dad, but they didn't call him dad. They never did. They called him Clifford. And so I think when I was born, he looked at it like another chance. I didn't do good with my children, but so now I have an opportunity to, do better with my grandson. And he did. He did. He protected me. He, whatever I asked him to do, he would do. And so, my childhood was good. Played sports, basketball, tried baseball, and played baseball for 1 year. Just, carefree kid. Back in those days, kids went outside and, we used to stay outside and ride our bicycles and play out in the woods and those sorts of things. So my childhood is really not a whole lot happening there until I got around the age of 10. I got on the basketball team, and there was our best player on the team. He became friends with me. His parents lived across the street from where we lived. And so I started catching rides with his parents. And out of that, he and I become friends. And but he was, looking back, he was a bad influence, because I was with him when I smoked, my first cigarette, and I was with him. I believe I was with him and some other friends when I smoked marijuana for the first time.
Now, how old were you?
When I smoked my first cigarette,
Yeah.
12.
Okay.
Yeah, I was 12, and he had a pack of cigarettes, and he said, "You want to try it?" And I remember trying to smoke it, and he said, "This is how you really smoke it," and I inhaled for the first time, and a couple of years after, so at the age of 12 is when I really started to kind of go downhill a little bit. 13 started getting worse, and so by the time I was 14 is when I started, basically running away from home. I would be gone for 2 or 3 days. I remember coming home, my grandmother would be waiting up for me. And I remember telling her, just in a real mean way, I was like, "You don't have to wait up for me. I'm nobody's going to mess with me." And so she would be, I just remember her sitting on the couch pacing, back and forth, worried about where I was at. And so I started hanging out with the wrong people. I was with a friend of mine one night, and this guy pulled up in the car, and they said, "You want to ride?" And I was like, "Sure, I'll go for a ride with you guys." Really didn't know the guy. So we're riding around, we're smoking marijuana and different things. And so all of a sudden the police were behind us. And I saw the blue lights, and the guy who was driving the car wasn't stopping. I always thought, when you see the blue lights, you pull over on the side of the road. But this guy was defying all of that. And so we was in basically a full-blown police chase.
Wow.
And so I'm looking like, oh, no, I'm about to die. So eventually, I guess he runs into a dead end. And so the cops, the police, they're all, they're on top of our car, basically. They have their guns drawn. And I remember that. And I just remember seeing like guns and blue lights. And they were like, "Get on the ground, get on the ground." And mind you, at this point, I had no idea what was going on. I was just joyriding, basically. Well, come to find out, he had stole the car. So they arrested us, took us to jail. And then they tried to say I actually stole the car. But, it's too long of a story to go in. But that right there, I was 14. That was my first time getting in trouble. It was a YDC, juvenile detention. And I was in there for a couple of days. And my grandmother come down to see me and ask me. I said, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't even know the guy. I was able to weasel my way out of that. And so once I got out of that, probably a year or two went by again. I was in trouble again. And I ended up violating my probation. And I remember I had to go before the judge. If you know anything about violating your probation, that means you're more than likely going to jail. And so I had to go before the judge. I had my grandmother standing on my right, and I was facing the judge. And the judge that day, she looked like she had just had it, like, I don't know if I was like the last case of the day or whatever, but she just was like, I'm sick of looking at young teenagers. The next one come before me, I'm sending them to jail. That's kind of look she had. So I'm standing before, and I'm hoping that I can get a break, some leniency. But so she looks at my grandmother, and my grandmother says, because I haven't given her a lot of problems at this point, just a lot of problems. And she asked my grandmother, like, what should we, what do you want me to do? My grandmother said, "There's nothing I can do with him." And she said, "Boom, 90 days. And I looked at my grandmother, I'm like, "What?" And sure enough, they sent me to boot camp. It was a little jail boot camp. It was in Davisboro, Georgia, down in South Georgia. And I had to do 90 days, 3 months, the whole summer. Not like the church boot camps we do. They're like yelling at you. They'll beat you up, and these are like huge Marines. Like they seemed big, at least back then they seemed big because maybe we were little, but I don't know, but they were really big. But I had to do 90 days in their boot camp, and I had to do 30 days in YDC, and the 30 days in YDC didn't even count. Mm-hmm. So I was just wasting time. But you have to stay there until you're actually shipped off or whatever. Okay. So I stayed there for 3 months, a month, and then got shipped down to Davisboro. And so when I got out of there, I was making up in my mind I'm gonna stay out of trouble, because when I first got out, I was like, yes sir, they teach you all that, yes sir, yes ma'am, you learn all. So I did good for a while, but then my friend came over, the one that had kind of sent me on this trajectory. So he come over and he's trying to get me to come with him, and I was able to make a stand. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to stay at home. But eventually I ended up giving in and right back to doing the same things, smoking marijuana, running the streets and, doing all the, stuff I shouldn't have been doing. Right. And so, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much my teenage years. They were not good at all. I don't think I have really any good memories. My childhood memories are a lot better, but my teenage, there was a lot of bad things happened when I was a teenager. And so by the time I was 19, put it all in perspective, I think I had 21 charges. That I, 21 different times I had been charged with the police, or different types of run-ins, and man, it was just like a normal way of life. The police would come to our house so often. They like knew our names. Yeah. Oh yeah, how you doing, buddy? And they call you by your name. Like that's how dysfunctional our house was. But it becomes normal. It's like it's normal to fight. I remember my dad, he beat on all of his girlfriends, all of his girlfriends. He beat on all of them, and a lot of times in front of us.
It seems like I've heard before that you talked about that was your uncles too. That was kind of lifestyle, uncle. Just a lot of violence, a lot of. So
when I was, just to back up, so when I was 15, my uncle had this girlfriend, and so we were all sitting in the living room, and it was normal. And I told you he's like a light switch, So we're all sitting there. They're joking back and forth, and I'm laughing at both of their jokes. They're both, and so I'm just sitting there. So she takes a bottle. She had a Coke bottle, because he made a joke about her, something lewd or something. And so she took this Coke bottle and threw it at him and hit him with it. He jumps up and starts beating her, like beating her in front of me. He starts like punching her, beating her, kicking her. He like, dropping elbows on her and all kinds of stuff, kicking her in the head. And I was so scared, because I was 15, I was like skinny, and I didn't want to get beat up like that, So I was just sitting there looking at it, and I ran to my room, and I remember just sitting there like, what do I do? What do I do? Should I call the police? If I call the police, maybe he's gonna kill me. I'm like, he's gonna kill her. And so I go back in there again, just kind of peep around the corner, and I can see her head. It's like this big. It's like a basketball, like. And her face is, she's like a different person, unrecognizable. And he's still beating her. And I'm like, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? I just froze, I mean, I just panicked. Yeah. I really didn't know what to do. But, I don't know. If I had to do all over again, I probably would have risked it all and just tried to get him off of her. But, at the time, I didn't know what to do. Yeah. But so he's beating her, and I'm like, man, I wanted to stop. It finally did stop. So he picks her up, he takes her outside, and I'm like, where's he going with her? Where did he go? By that time, I was able to get away, and I'm like, hey, somebody call the police. But I can see him, he's dragging her across the yard, like dragging her like a piece of trash or something. So he beat her almost to death and dragged her behind my uncle's house that lived behind us and left her. Oh. I mean... You're talking about vicious. Do you remember
if she survived?
She did survive. Yeah. But, I really, like a memory like that, I really don't think about too often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, because And up until just now, I hadn't thought about it in a long time.
Well, a lot of times we figure out a way to block it out.
Yeah, and I think that's what happened for sure.
Because,
Yeah.
as you're saying this, I'm having flashbacks of just times where I wish I would have done something.
Yeah.
And you just block it out,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I'd like to say we go back a good ways. Me and Wallace, we have a lot of memories. And so as he's talking, I'm just going over all the things for years. And, with Tony, all these different people, family members and all that. And I guess one thing I would like to say is I thought my family was bad, but seeing, what you were raised in, we talked about, my family, would threaten or shoot here, shoot there. But his family, they didn't just talk about it, they did it.
They did.
And, my mom or whoever would give threats and kind of scare you. But your family actually is like, nah, we're gonna live it out. You
want me to tell you about some of that or no?
Well, that's up to you. That's up to you.
It don't matter. So long ago. And,
well, I'm just saying, it's just like when you say, no good memories.
Yeah, no.
It's like,
no, he said he had a lot of good memories.
Well, the memories I had were smaller. Like I was a smaller boy, but teenager years are, and there's a lot of different reasons for that. So, like Antonio just said, my family, they did exactly like, it wasn't like you said, there wasn't a bunch of talking. And so for an example, I think I was 10 years old and my dad, he had this thing where it was like, you're my son, I tell you what to do, they may be raising you, but I'm still your dad. It was like part of he had to feel that way, I guess. I don't know. But one night he came in, he used to come home drunk and he would target me. He would pick on me. And I think because he was jealous of the way my granddad had treated me because he never got that same treatment. Yeah. So when he would come home drunk, he would target me. And so he would be like, I would be watching cartoons. He would like, get out of the way. And he would turn it to another station or whatever, just out of spite, just to be mean or whatever. But one night he was like, you're going to bed right now. But I remember it was a Friday night. And I was like, why do I got to go to bed on Friday night? And he was like, I'm your daddy. I tell you when to go to bed. My granddad heard it. So my granddad came in and said, well, what's going on? Why does he got to go to bed? Because it was completely irrational. It's Friday night. Who cares?
Yeah.
And so my granddad was like, he don't have to go to bed. Just go and leave him alone. When my dad cussed out my granddad in his house, that's a no-no. That's a no-no. Anybody who knew my granddad, he didn't play that at all. Like he cut you, stab you, God rest his soul. But what he would do, actually, I prayed with him to get saved before he died. So my granddad said, okay, you gonna talk to me like that? I'll be right back. So my dad's still taking off my shoes. My granddad come in, he had his rifle. He had a little 22 caliber rifle that he kept in his closet that he pulled out occasionally. He put it out, aimed it at my dad's leg, pow. And I was sitting on this leg.
He didn't threaten, he did it.
No.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no. I mean, like I was sitting on this leg. He shot him in this leg. Right in front of me. Mm-hmm. My dad dropped me.
Oh, you were sitting in your dad's lap.
Yeah. As I was on this leg.
What if he would have missed?
I don't guess he didn't think about that. But I was on this leg. He shot him in this leg. Pow, right here in the leg.
Yeah.
And my dad dropped me, and I'm still watching this. And so my dad figured out how to get out of the house. He gets out of the house. My granddad goes outside to finish him off. Now, this all started over something as silly as me going to bed. And he's outside taking him out. You see what I'm saying? That's extreme.
Yeah.
So he goes outside. He aims to shoot. My dad my dad's crawling at this point. And my granddad's going to shoot him in the head. He's going to take him out. And as my granddad shot, my dad happened to lower his head, and he missed him. That's the only reason why he didn't kill him. So And though that's one instance of, like, you talk about people not talking. My auntie shot at my uncle. I was there that night when I don't know what it is, maybe because I was there all the time. But I was there that night. My uncle took a brick, bust out her windows. She went and got her gun. And my uncle was into kung fu, He used to like to have these nunchucks, And so she went out, was shooting at him, and he was walking as slow as possible, doing his nunchucks. This is true story. You can't make this stuff up. He's doing it, pow, pow. It's like doing it. Like, he wasn't even worried about her hitting him. That's a true story. And I would have been running, but he wasn't running. My dad cussed out me. This is the same auntie. My dad cussed out my auntie, and she actually shot him right here in the shoulder. And I asked him about that. He said, well, I was cussing her out. I was telling her where she could go. And he said, all of a sudden I felt something wrong.
Wow.
He said, yeah, he was a comedian. You just have to know him.
Yeah.
And so he said, I felt something wrong. I was like, whoa, she actually shot him, And so one night I was at home. This is the same aunt, not going to say her name. But one night I was at home, and she burst in the house looking for a boyfriend. She's like, where is he at? I was like, I don't know. I ain't seen him. We didn't mess with her.
Yeah.
And so she was like, I know he's in somewhere. So she's walking around the house. She got her gun. And so my uncle's girlfriend was in the house. He put a gun in her face. She put a gun in her face and said, I ought to shoot you. And I was like, whoa. And so she's still looking for him. He's hiding. And so
he's hiding in the house.
He's in the house.
Oh, wow.
He's hiding from her. She got the gun.
Okay.
She's looking to take him out. And so me and my other cousin, we're like scared. We're like hiding, like, whoa, she's gonna, And all of a sudden, he comes out of the closet or wherever it was he was hiding, and all of a sudden you can hear the gunshot, pow, 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 pow. And I'm like, man, she shot him. So I walk in the living room. There he was laying there. And he was just like, man, just call my. And she was sitting there calm. She had the gun laying right there. She was sitting on the couch like this, like, yeah, he shouldn't have messed with me. I told you, didn't I? Like, and he was like, call my mama, tell her I'm shot. And he survived. But
not call 911, call my mama. That's what he said?
Yeah, I think he said call. Yeah. He said call my mama, and let her know. He was just laying there. She shot him like 4 or 5 times. Yeah, and that was normal. And my granddad shot my grandmama, and he cut her throat. She had a huge scar right here where he tried to kill her. Yeah. And but that was just normal stuff. But I never was that violent, not me. I wasn't like that. Like when they would be fighting and stuff, a lot of times I'd be screaming and stuff.
So earlier when Antonio said,
like,
when you said that he broke curses.
Oh yeah.
That was a family curse.
Oh yeah,
from your
because
grandfather to your dad to your
yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was never. You
were more like the jokester. Like laughing, joking.
Well, I think as I've gotten older, I think a lot of that's a coping mechanism.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because otherwise you sit there with all this crazy stuff going on. You can't just sit there and think about that all the time.
Right.
And so there's a lot of comedians in my family. Yeah. A lot of people who want to be family and want to be funny and try to be funny. And I think that a lot of times they're coping with some of the things that we saw growing up.
Right.
So earlier when you said you have a lot of good memories that you just choose to focus on those, is
I do.
That kind of what you're saying?
Absolutely. Like, like my basketball days and my grandmother coming, the good times I had with my dad, the good times I had with my Uncle Tony.
Yeah.
Even my auntie, the good times I had with her, the good times I had with, you can pick and choose.
Yeah.
Life isn't a picture. It's more of a motion picture. You know what I mean? It's different. You know what I mean? And so God didn't intend for us to get caught on one particular situation or circumstance in life. That's why life keeps moving.
Yeah.
Because God wants us to keep moving.
Yeah.
And so I think that, looking back, I can see there was a lot of good things. Yes, absolutely. My grandmother was very loving, even though there was all the chaos around us. Yeah. She loved people. She really did. Very, very loving woman. She really was. And my grandmother has passed away. She passed away last February. My dad passed away last April, and my granddad passed away a few years back. So all three of those people have passed away, and so those are the only three people on earth I can consider a parental influence.
Yeah.
And they're all gone.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I can just remember even when your dad passed away, and you were just talking about the good times that you two had.
Oh, for sure.
And it was just really encouraging because, we can talk about the bad, but then you're just reflecting on all the good times as well.
Yeah, he called me 6 months before he died, out of the blue. And, he called me and he said it was an odd call, because he never just called like that, but he wanted to talk. Usually it was like, okay, what do you need? But he just wanted to talk. And so we're talking and he says, son, he said, I just want to tell you, and this was his way of saying I'm sorry. He's old school. His dad never said I'm sorry or anything, so he doesn't know how to communicate any of those type of emotions or anything like that. So he said, I want to tell you something. He said, the reason why I did drugs and I did alcohol was because I felt so guilty for leaving you and your siblings, leaving y'all and not fending for you guys and not protecting you, not taking care of you. So he said, that's the reason why I did drugs. So he said, I was trying to numb the pain and the guilt that I felt. Yeah. And so we talked. It was a heart to heart. And I said, well, Dad, I said, I've let that go. I'm like, I'm not really, I wasn't concerned about that. I said, I love you. He said, well, I love you too. And I prayed with him and we got off the phone. And then 6 months later, he passed away. We talked a couple of times after that, but at the funeral, from time to time, he might say, I'm proud of you or whatever. But at the funeral, I did the funeral because he left me in charge of everything. And so I do the funeral and we're all saying goodbye to people as they're leaving. And one of the guys from the center that my dad was an alcoholic. And so one of the guys at the center that my dad was taking these alcoholic classes at, these AA meetings or whatever. And he said, hey, I knew your dad. I said, oh, really? He said, yeah. He said, listen. He says, your dad was so proud of you. Now, he really never told me that. He said, your dad was so proud of you. He says, he bragged on you. He would tell everybody, my son's a preacher. He says, he said, he was so proud of you. And he said, now I see why. Oh, wow. And he shook my hand and then walked out. And I remember thinking to myself, like, he never told me, he never just told me that. Yeah. But he told other people that. Yeah. So it was easier for him to express that to other people than it was to express it to me.
Yeah.
But,
and like you said, old school. They just
that
was that generation.
And I will have to say he was a good hard worker.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I mean, he wasn't scared of he didn't have a fear about anything.
He was smart too,
climbing those trees and just really hard worker. And he actually took you on a couple.
He got me several jobs. He got me a job at a university. When he got me a job with the tree cutting service. Yeah. And protecting me, let me know what I should and shouldn't do. Because you can get killed on a tree cutting job real quick. Yeah. But they told me what I should and shouldn't do. But he was, he knew how to do whatever. Yeah. He could fix anything, And so, and the last thing he gave to me, he called me. This was like a month or so before he died or something. And it was like another one of those calls. You're like, what? But he called and he said, hey, if anything ever happened to me, he said, I got this lawnmower. He had this little small house. He didn't have a whole lot of anything. He was living on disability and social security. But he says, I got this riding lawnmower. And that was like his prized possession because he wore the key around his neck. And he would drive that thing to the store and everything. Mm-hmm. But he says, I got this riding lawnmower. He said, if anything ever happened to me, he said, I want you to have it. And I remember thinking, okay, when is something going to happen to you? But I guess he knew better than I did. Yeah. And I think he knew he had some issues going on. But so I got that lawnmower at the house. Yeah. My wife said, you're never going to get rid of it? Nope. Oh. I'll keep it and just I don't know, put a toy. I don't know. We'll just keep it. But it's, you know, that was the last thing he gave to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So earlier you're talking back to, you know, when you're, I think you said up until you're 19, you had several charges against you. Is that what age you're talking about?
Yeah, I got more after 19 though, but
Okay.
19 was like, by the time I was 19, I had 21, and I got saved when I met Antonio in 2002. I was 21.
Okay, that's what I was getting to. I couldn't remember how old you were.
So 19, I get a couple more charges over the next 2 years. I meet Antonio at the Walmart on the east side of Athens. I remember, I'll tell you a funny story. It was me, this other girl, and this other guy. And I don't go into it too much, but anyway, we were trying to get money. And so our whole scheme was to go into Walmart and tell people that we ran out of gas and we need $5. And back
So
then,
you all split up.
we did.
Gather the money.
The girl didn't, but maybe she did. I can't remember. But me and my friend did. And when I saw Antonio, he had a shirt and towel, and I was like, "Oh, okay, this brother got some money." And so I approached him. I said, "Hey, man, I ran out of gas. You got $5?" And he said, "If you died right now, where would you go?" And I was like, "What?" Kind of caught me off guard. And I was like, "Oh, I go to heaven. Yeah, for sure." And he started telling me what the Bible said, comparing that to my current way of living, and we concluded that I wasn't actually going to heaven. And so I prayed to get saved, which is funny because your daughter, your oldest daughter, and she was in a car seat.
Wow. Okay.
Because I remember you guys had the gold Mazda.
She would have been 18 months old.
Yeah, you guys had the gold Mazda, and you were in the back seat, which I thought was kind of weird. And I was like, "Why is she in the back seat?" And you were in the back seat with the car seat.
Oh, okay.
And you was playing with your oldest daughter while we're sitting there. And I remember thinking, like, I know she got to be ready to go, because we were just talking and talking and talking. That made a huge impression on me, looking back, how you sat there, patiently playing with her while he talked. Because where I come from, it's like, that's not what you do. You let down the window. I'm ready to go right now. Come on. And so that was unique. That was different.
So now my memory is getting worse, but
Yeah.
so we went from Walmart outside.
So we went Walmart. Somehow we ended up outside.
Okay.
And I ended up praying to get saved. And you said, and after we got through praying, you still gave me $5.
But it was a catch to it.
It was. You said, "I'll give you $5 if you come to church."
Yes.
And I remember I said, "Yeah," but I had no intentions of like keeping my end of the bargain. And so I go home. I'm thinking it's over. 2 days later, I see the gold car, and I'm like, "Who is that?" And sure enough, pull in. You're in the front seat, and you jump out, and you're like, "You get in the front." And I'm like, "I can get in the front." I just thought, I don't know why I thought that was so different, but just different. But and you started talking to me, and you was like, "Hey, let's go to church." And I was like, "Oh, well, I got something to do." And I don't remember every excuse I gave you. You had like a comeback. I was like, "I'm hungry. I'll buy you something to eat." It's like, "Well, I'm finna go make some money. I'll give you money." I'm waiting on somebody to come pick me up. I'll give you a ride. So I finally ran out of excuses.
So Antonio was a little bit persistent.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, to say the least. That's an understatement. So I ended up in the car. I'm still thinking, like, what am I doing? Like, where am I going? Like, who are these people? So we get to church, and I walk in, and I've never seen a church like that. I grew up in the Black Baptist churches, where it's like everybody looked the same. The amazing thing about when I first came to church was all the different people, Black people, white people, Hispanic people. And that was mind blowing to me, because I had never seen that before. And I was like, wow, I like this, because that's the kind of person I always was, like I never been racist or anything like that. And so, I go, and it's a good experience. And over the next 3.5 years, I'm just kind of still trying to figure out that is what I really want to do. Then in 2006 is when I just went all in, and that's what I've been doing ever since. So it's been almost 20 years, almost 19 years ago. But you guys have been faithful and been there for us, and so we equally look up to you guys, if not more, and we appreciate all you guys have been doing, over the last 30 something years.
So
Wow.
what kind of changes, like in 2006, what did you see? What were the changes in your life that you started to know God was doing in you? Or
I think 2006. You know that story in the Bible where the prodigal son, the Bible says he came to the end of himself. I think that's what happened with me.
Yeah.
I had to. I think some people have to get to the very last drop in the bottle, and I think that was me. I was just done. I was like, I can't do anything else. I can't. I done tried everything else, and I was like, I surrender. So that is what the difference was. It was like I was just done.
Yeah.
And so
And I would like to say, just the fact that you were scared of going to hell. Because
yes.
I remember that several times.
Yeah.
And when you say coming to the end, I remember I was on a job site and you called.
Yeah.
And then you were just totally terrified.
Yeah.
And it was like, man, I don't want to go to hell. I don't want to
Yeah.
go to hell. And I remember we praying.
Yeah.
And after that, just a huge change,
Yeah.
took place.
So I have thought about that over the years, and so it was almost like, what I used to do is I used to go to the bars and the clubs and all that, and then I would on Saturday night, then I would repent on Sunday, and so I was doing that, and I remember the last time I remember praying and just feeling like nothing happened. I was like, whoa, and so that really scared me. Knowing what I know now about the Bible, knowing that God does forgive if we ask him to, but at the time, just the thought that God is, nowhere around and I'm asking him to, forgive, this scared me, and God used it. And I remember not wanting to feel like that anymore. Yeah. And so when I came back to church, I was like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that I never put myself in that position, again. And but yeah, I mean, my life in Christ, if it wasn't for him, I believe I would be dead. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. None of it is me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
None of it. Like being a good father, a good husband, or a pastor or any of that. I rely on him 100% to do all of those things.
Yeah.
So I would just say the hope isn't what we can do. The hope is what he can do when we surrender.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because if we're left to our own abilities, then we're not going to,
Yep.
we're just going to keep going around in circles, basically, because we have a ceiling.
Yeah.
But God doesn't. You know what I mean? He's a limitless God, So my wife, being married to her, we've been married now for almost 17 years. That's a miracle.
Yeah.
Our kids are, we're raising them the right way, and they never heard us curse or drink or beat each other or shoot one another or anything like that. They haven't seen anything like that.
Whole new world.
Whole new world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we're giving them is what we didn't have.
Yeah.
Which is difficult in the beginning. You really don't know what to do. It's like, you're just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And but we've been married long enough now where we think we don't have it figured out, but but we're a lot closer than we're best friends. And
So as childhood, teenage years, young Christian, what would you like to say to those that out there that are listening? And what would you like to say to them just going through all that to now?
That God will use your past to bring benefit to your future. He really will. It doesn't matter what it is. You look at the Apostle Paul in the Bible. He often referred back to his past. Talked about how I was someone who persecuted Christians, but now look at who I am today. He said, I am what I am by the grace of God.
Yeah.
And he would always talk about how bad he was. And he talked about, as a result of being so bad, he worked harder than other people. And so you see, so it's like God will take our past and he will allow it to benefit us in the future. You know, if you get saved, you surrender to Jesus,
Yes.
you know? And so I look back on my past as this might sound really crazy, but I feel like growing up the way I grew up taught me how to fight to a point where, look, we love our kids, but they don't know much about fighting, you know, because everything's been kind of, you know what I mean, given to them and those sorts of things. But the way we grew up was you fight for everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I might wake up in the morning and have to fight for no reason other than my uncle, you know, flipped a switch or something, or my granddad is drinking, or my dad might come home tonight and you know, push me over or whatever he want to do, you know, make me take his boots off or whatever stuff he try to make me do. And so, you know, I had to be, you know, like alert all the time. You know what I mean? And so, you know, you had to fight at the drop of a hat. And so I think my growing up really did teach me how to fight. Well, today it's like, you know, it's natural, it's normal. You know, when I say fight, I don't mean going out punching anybody in the face or anything like that. I'm just talking about fighting spiritually.
And not giving up.
Not giving up, exactly. You know, like I'm going to figure this thing out. The way I always look at it is, if life punches you, you punch back twice as hard.
Yeah.
And so that's how I live life. You know, that's how our church, our family, our marriage, whatever it is I feel like I'm facing, I'm not going to allow it to cause me to quit. And so that's just how I look at it.
Yeah.
But a lot of that is my past, and you know, when I work with you, tapping into that, you know, really tapping into that mindset, and it really is it's a spirit, it's a fighting spirit, that you know, that I believe that was developed over the years. It's a determination.
Yeah.
You know, like the woman with the issue of blood, you know, all these people, this huge crowd of people. And she's trying to get to Jesus, but in order to get to Jesus, she got to, you know, move some people out of the way, bump them out of the way. But the Bible says that she was talking to herself, I got to do this. Yes. I got to do this. I got to get to. And the Bible says that Jesus rewarded her for that. Yeah. You know, God is looking for determination. You know, make up in our mind, I'm not quitting. I'm not giving up. I'm gonna see this thing through the end. You know, one of the disturbing things I've been seeing a lot lately is hearing these stories of these people renouncing their faith. You know, it's like, what's going on with that? You know what I mean? People again giving in, quitting. Yeah. But Jesus said that those who are saved will endure to the end. Yeah. And so it's a mindset. I'm seeing this thing all the way to the end. Yeah. You know, no matter what, I'm seeing it to the end. So.
Well, in your story, we're now coming to the point where Jessica enters the picture.
Yes.
So we want to bring her back in.
Yeah.
We're going to pause for a minute and we'll kind of set up the studio and then bring her back in. So again, thank you so much for your time and your stories and your perseverance. It's been very inspirational. Thank you.
Thank you.